Hey folks, welcome to this week's episode of the Legal Beagle podcast. We have a very, very special guest today, Senior Trial Counsel for Morgan & Morgan. Look, if you're in this profession and you don't know who Keith Mitnik is, then you've been living under a rock. If you're not in this profession, then just buckle up, sit back and enjoy. This is one of the best in our profession. I am honored to have Keith Mitnik as our guest today. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words.
So Keith, you've written a book that has made its way through the plaintiff's bar around the country, Don't Eat the Bruises. I've read it myself. Everyone on our staff has read it, but you have a new book coming out called Deeper Cuts. Can you tell me a little bit about that book?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And it's been a long, hard work. I used the downtime during COVID. I've been meaning to do it, and I've kept a file that's gotten thicker and thicker with new ideas, and I wanted to get it out there. And I'm so busy in trial, it's hard. It takes so much time to write these things. I used that opportunity and got it done, but then all the rewrites and additions and the edits. Finally, it is going to print today. So hopefully we'll have it out. Pre-sales, they keep having to up the number of initial orders to the printer, because pre-sales has gone good, which makes me very, very happy, because I know there's a bunch of stuff in there that's going to make a big difference to people. And I am not selling it to make money out of what I make. Is so little out of it, I can eat it up in a big meal with a couple good glass of wine. It's about, I have a unique opportunity to try a lot of cases, and I'm a strategist, and I come up with stuff that works and I share it within our firm. But I am driven to get it out to as many people as I can, because we're fighting a common enemy, and that's called injustice. And anything I can do to help brothers and sisters in arms in the fight to head off injustice, I want to do it. I want to go to my grave knowing I did what I could to help for a cause that I believe deeply in. And the idea of the new book, Deeper Cuts, is the title is a play off of Don't Eat the Bruises, where you cut out the bruises. This idea is the deeper cut. In its kind of summary fashion, I see it like we got the mainframe, which is Don't Eat the Bruises. This book I see is like you got an app. I drive a Tesla. I get updates. We all get updates. This to me is like you plug it into the mainframe, and it's not a new book. So let's get rid of the old book. That's old stuff. It's not old stuff. That is still the foundation, A to Z in trial. But what I've done is, since I wrote the book, there's been a whole lot of advancements. And this is my opportunity to refresh and update to get the newest stuff built into it. And so the key components are, number one, I have a process that I use that I call wisdom of the wise. And it's really, you ask yourself, in spite of whatever is causing you concern in a lawsuit, in spite of X, why are we still right? And there's a 3-4 step process that you can plug any problem in, and it is really a fantastic problem solving mechanism. And I use it automatically. I don't run it through the steps because I've done it forever. It just happens for me. But there are steps. I like creating systems. I've always hated hearing lawyers who just come in and say, let me tell you, I did something impressive. And everybody goes, wow. But you know what? It doesn't help me a damn bit, because it was a one-off kind of thing. I want to take whatever strategies and ideas I've come up with and put them in systems that can be reproduced by any lawyer in any case, and benefit them, and just drop it in. If you're real experienced, it still can be helpful. If you're new to it and you're looking for guidance, it's real helpful to you. If I've got a malpractice case, a car crash case, a slip and fall case, a product case, I'm suing a cigarette company, whatever it is, these systems fit any case in any lawyer's skill set and can help. In order to do that, it can't be a war story. It's got to be a process. It's got to be systems. So I call them systems that simply work. So when I got the opportunity to write this new book with all these ideas, I thought one of the best things I could do, I want to get the new ideas out, but what if I take my process I use that is creating all these systems, the process that runs underneath the systems and is the generator of all of them. What if I've just turned that into steps and formalize it instead of just letting it happen in my mind organically, so I can share with people so they can A, understand the systems better, B, expand the systems into brand new territory, and C, come up with some, maybe not even just totally off on your own. Then I'll have really done something worthwhile. So what I did, I call it wisdom of the why, because it's all about asking why. So a chunk of the book at the front is me laying out this process and then applying it in multiple ways early on to get the point across. And then as I go through the book with these new ideas, new strategies, additions, at the end of each one, will stop and say, now let's apply the wisdom of the why. I call it wowing it. Let's show how I got there. Because the more you go, I see what he's doing. That didn't, I thought this guy was a genius. He's not. He's just got good process. He's got something works. I can do this. And it's the truth. I'm not a dummy, but most of this stuff works because I've spent a lot of time of figuring out how to reproduce it. So part of it that I'm really excited about is getting the underlying process out there. Number two, I've done something the first book did not do at all, which is I brought the same Don't Eat the Bruises systems back into the workup phase. Don't Eat the Bruises was really an A to Z trial book. This one, I brought it into the workup discovery phase so that you put your case in the best position to get a full settlement value. And if they dare say, we'll see in court, your case is ready to just plug into the Don't Eat the Bruises system at trial. And then I've added also, in addition to that, some brand new trial strategies. I've got some boosters to go into my, what I call bias busting voir dire system that's so essential. I've made that system that has done so well for me and others even better. I've added to it. It's not, I haven't got a new system. It's the same system, but I've updated it with some tweaks that really make it hum. And then the new trial systems plugged in. And then I've added things like trials during COVID, a whole section on med mal that I did not do in the other book, because I'm trying to reach as many people as I can. And the percentage, the number of people do med mal is much lower than do general PI, car crash, premises. So I decided I do a lot of med mal. I got a lot of really helpful stuff. And I thought, look, I'm writing a new book, carve out a section for med mal. And then I've got a section, like I said, that deals with the time of COVID and some of these things. So I've really expanded the whole thing into the workup. I got the process that lies beneath it. I've upgraded the trial strategies and the voir dire strategies and added some brand new stuff like, and I've got a section in there, two things, and this is a long ass answer, but I'll give you these two and then I'll hush. There is a section two sections that may be the most valuable of everything in there. One of them is the what I kind of lump into what I call beauties in the eyes of the beholder. And what it does is I walk through very common problems that happen in your typical car crash case or slip and fall, trip and fall case that we all see all the time. And I go through and show how so many of the things that we lose sleep over, we discount our cases over. We're worried to go into trial because I got these problems. We wake up in the morning and say, why the hell am I the unlucky lawyer who got all these problems in my cases? And I point out why they want to be problems, not real problems, how to solve them. And people say, well, if we're solving them, what's the difference if we call them a problem with a solution or it isn't a problem to start with? You're still having to deal with it. And my answer is that it's night and day difference. Because if I get up in the morning and look at my caseload and feel sorry for myself because I think it's riddled with problems, then our jobs are hard enough. I mean, good God, I don't know anybody, maybe professional athletes, but football players maybe take a bigger beating. But the emotional beating and strain and toll it takes on us is immense. And so anything I can do to raise the joy level and lower the stress level is a gift. I do it for myself. So when you get up in the morning and go, I love my caseload. I'm not snake bit. These are great cases. Well, I've done something just on a joy level. I get up in the morning and like my cases that gives you some peace and exhilaration. And that to me may be the most important thing I could ever do for another lawyer, because I love what we do, but I'm very mindful of how hard it is. And the other thing it does is, if you look at that same case and go, you know what, all this stuff I was worried about, they're not problems. Guess what you do? You treat it like one of your favorite cases. And what's that mean? It means when the client calls, you're glad to talk to him. What's that mean? The client goes and tells everybody what a great lawyer you are, and you get more cases. What else does it do? When the defense tries to offer you a bullshit amount, you call bullshit with confidence, because you're not scared to go to trial on it, because you're not seeing it as damaged goods that goes in the discount bin. So you will hold fast for truly fair settlements. And if you got to triumph, you'll walk over there with your head held high and confidence through the ceiling. So it is a huge difference between dealing with these same problems, but dealing from a perspective. I'll give you one quick example. How come all my clients have prior problems? Every damn one of them, somebody been to the doctor about it. Why can't I have someone with this clean, with no problems in the past? And by the way, why did most of my cases don't have a lot of visible property damage? Why me? Why me? Well, I'll tell you why. Think about it. It's a herniated disc case. That's what they look like. You don't have a crappy herniated disc inventory. You got in a herniated disc inventory, and they're great cases. Why? Because grownups all have had something go wrong with their neck or back. I mean, kids maybe not. Who the hell hadn't lifted something wrong and ended up at a chiro or somebody? Who hadn't gone to the primary care doctor and said, damn, I slept wrong, my neck's killing me. We hurt our necks and backs. So of course, most of our cases have some history of some complaints. That's the nature of the beast. Here's another one. How come I don't have, all my cases aren't total vehicles? Unless you specialize in death cases, you ain't gonna have total vehicles. When you go by on the highway and see that car mangled up and you go, oh my God, I hope there were no children, they're probably all dead. It's because they're probably all dead. Herniated disc cases generally don't look like that. So it isn't your bad luck. It's your working on very valuable, proud cases that happen to not have a lot of visible property damage, and people have pre-existing. So now when I show you in here, how do I deal with it? And you could just, pow, I'm telling you, it is bullshit. It's not a problem. But instead of going, okay, I got all these problems, but at least I know how to deal with it. You go, I ain't got problems. I got great cases. I love them. Now you got a love affair with your caseload. That's worth lots. So that piece is very exciting to me. And the other one is, I get people asking all the time, how are you getting $6.4 million on a herniated disc, no surgery? How are you getting $4 million on a herniated disc, no surgery? How are you getting last week $1.3 million on a herniated disc, very little property damage? Surveillance of my guy, every one of these had surveillance of my clients do it, all kind of stuff. Just none of them alive. None of them were, aha, we caught you lying. They were all consistent. They just look very active and therefore don't look hurt very bad, certainly not millions of bucks. So these aren't, and trust me, they ain't in great neighborhoods we're trying it. I mean, this one I just tried, I grew up in Lake County. It's as probably conservative an area there is in the state. Hell, I'll bet you there's nowhere much more conservative in the country. $1.3 million with, BS offers. How does that happen? Well, I'll tell you how it happens. A lot of these problems are wannabe problems, they're not real problems. But the other piece is, I have figured out, not alone, but with Matt Morgan, a partner of mine, and who came to me and said, we're undervaluing these cases. And I said, well, you say that because you're young, you don't get it. Well, the old dog learned new tricks, but they aren't tricks. It was an awakening. You're right. The numbers that I grew up thinking were right, they were bullshit numbers 30 years ago. Well, everything else has gone up in inflation. These are still the same numbers, and they were bullshit 30 years ago. Why? So I'm not an idiot for thinking they were worth less. That's what I was taught. You're not an idiot because you think that case is settled for 100 grand all day long. It's just what we all thought. We just were wrong. Well, okay, it's like the saying, when's the best time to plant a tree? 100 years ago. When's the second best time? Today. So we're planting trees. We figured it out. So we have figured out the true value is a lot more. It's not trick. It's just fair, right? And so one of the things in the book that I'm really excited about is a system. When we decided we were going to start asking for what these cases were really worth, I had to, again, I thought, I can't just stand up and ask for $6 million on herniated disc. I got to A, believe in it, and I got to B, validate it so that the jury can believe in it. And so in order to do that, I had to develop some new systems, and I put a name on it because I like to name these systems because it sticks, and I call it the maximum justice matrix. And all it is 3 main steps. A is what I call dignity of damages. You have to teach the jury that this is not a money grab. This is fundamental American justice that we're proud of. So we put the putting a dollar figure on what was taken in the way of health up on the proper pedestal where it belongs in the pantheon of American civil justice. So it's the first is establishing the dignity of damages. The second is putting an end to belittling pain you can't see, which is their game. You don't look at you out throwing the Frisbee. This can't be a bad injury. So there's a system in there that can be just done over and over and over that will kill that crap. And then the last step is called the Audacity to Ask, which has to do with first a pep talk to yourself so you can get your own heart and soul in the right place. So you then can deliver it to the jury, which is all about believing in the number and validating it. So you didn't just pluck it out of the air. So when you put those 3 steps together, I call it the maximum justice matrix. And it is the backbone behind all these. Every week at Morgan & Morgan, we got $1 million plus. Just got one last night. Just saw the email. I'm sitting on the couch eating dinner. Got an email, someone down in Fort Myers, just boom, $1.2 million. Same kind of case. We're doing it. We got jurors out right now, 2 of them out. Guarantee at least one of them is going to be a big verdict. So, and they're righteous verdicts. So my point is, through all this, the book, it contains those 2 big monster things along with everything else I told you. So I'm really excited about this book.
When you sit down to write a book like Deeper Cuts, how long does that process take?
The first one, here's what I learned when I wrote it the first time. You want to hear the background story? I ended up writing Don't Eat the Bruises.
Yeah.
I've been gathering all these thoughts, and I thought I'm in a unique situation in that I try, 16, 18 slow year, 14 trials a year. I don't work cases up anymore. Trust me, I worked a lot of cases up. But for the last about 20 years, all I do is try. And we are geared to go try cases at our firm. So I try lots of cases. So I'm in a unique position. So in the old days, before I took that position, I'd try maybe 3 cases a year, sometimes none. And I had all these great ideas. Hell, by the time I got to the next trial, I'd forgotten what the hell they were. So all of a sudden I'm trying case. So I got all these ideas, I try them out. Some stuff flopped, some worked. And so I didn't keep the flops, but the keepers I kept in a file. And it started getting pretty big. And I thought, I'd love to get this out to people. And I need to write a book, but I didn't have a clue how to write a book, let alone get it published. But I had that folder carried around, and I really would start writing and get, a chapter or 2 and then get busy and trial. And out of the blue, phone rings, and it's Rick Freeman. And I didn't know, I knew who Rick was. I'd read his books. They're fantastic. The Polarizing the Jury and Rules of the Road, and thought the world of them, but we didn't know each other. Phone rings. I don't even to this day know how I got my cell phone. And I'm in the car and it says, "Hey, this is Rick Freeman." I said, "Hey, how are you?" Acting like I knew it was. I mean, I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together. It was the Rick Freeman. I'm just pretending because they're acting like they know me and I don't want to be rude. So I said, "Yeah, how you doing?" "Good. Listen, I just wanted to talk about it. I've been seeing some seminars you put on and some of your materials out there, and Trial Guides is always looking for something fresh. They don't want to just have the same authors writing their 3rd and 4th book. And I really think it'd be good for you to write a book for them." And I said, "Is this Rules of the Road, Rick Freeman?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I'm sorry, I was pretending to know who the hell it was." And since then, we become friends, and we talk and we email back and forth, and he's given me some ideas. I've shared some strategies with him, and I consider, and we've had multiple dinners, and I consider Rick we're on the opposite sides of the country, so we don't hang out, but I consider him a dear friend of mine. And he said, all right, I'm going to introduce you to Aaron that owns Trial Guides, who's also, by the way, a trial lawyer, and a fantastic trial lawyer. And so we hooked up. I told him my idea, and that became Don't Eat the Bruises. Now, the question you asked me is, what's involved, how long? Here's what I didn't know. I see myself in the damn little square up here. I am the most, sometimes I'm embarrassed. Why would you put your hands down? But I make faces, I tilt my head, I cock my eyes, I got my hands. I mean, I'm kind of maybe more demonstrative than some, but everybody does it to some degree. We communicate so much with the tone of our voice, the inflection of our voice, the cadence, the pauses, the rapid fire, the hands, the eyes, the faces. Now you sit down and try to get all that I'm used to doing to jurors or teaching a group of lawyers in a room, and all of a sudden it's just on a page. I had no damn idea how hard it was, because you go back and reread it and you go, well, that's boring as hell. So I'd say, I got to put some personality in it. So it's me. So I go in and write in my personality. And you got to read it and go, well, that's just corny as shit. It looks like you're writing in your personality. It's amateurish. And so it was so much harder communicating with the emphasis in things I want in the written word alone. But I got through it. And then as you did more, you got a little better, and you go reread and rewrite. And then I sent it off to Trial Guides, and they got a fantastic editor there, Tina Ricks. And she's done all of Nick Rowley's books. She's done David Ball's stuff. She did the original Reptile. She done Freeman's books. She's just their go-to best person. And she's very good, but she's a slave. She's a taskmaster, and she is doesn't hold back. So I sent this thing off to her, the first Don't Eat the Bruises, and I thought it was going to come back. This is the most ready to go project I've ever seen. This is so good. My job's easy. That's not what I heard. And she basically said, "You illiterate bastard." Now, she didn't say that, but I mean, when she sent it back on this crazy program where she writes all these things in the margin, these lines go over, and it just looking at it was like overwhelming. Just looking at the program I'm supposed to now deal with as we go back and forth in the editing process. But it came back with so much, like I'd have a chapter was 3 pages, the next one would be 30 pages. I didn't have any wrap up at the end. I didn't have any lead into it. She'd say, well, you said all this, you're assuming everyone knows this, but you better give some explanation so it makes sense. I'm going, oh, for God's sake, they're lawyers, they know. But then I'd look at it and go, you know what? They are lawyers and they're smart people, but I may be making assumptions, and it may be a really good chapter that's worthless and would be very valuable if I get a little So next thing, I spent as much time rewriting that damn book as I did writing it. And so how much time? I don't know. I probably spent writing it. I had been gathering material for years. The actual formal writing process probably took me, because with all my trials, 6 months. And then the rewrite took me just as long. My wife and I went on some trip to Italy, and I spent half my vacation for 2 weeks working on the book. If she was doing something else, I'm working on the book. And so it was a monstrous undertaking. And then when it finally got out and I got it in my hands, I couldn't believe this thing is so done. I thought, I don't want to ever do this again. This is so hard. But then I've been gathering and throwing things in a new file. And I'm like, I don't want to just share these in-house. I don't want to just go to a seminar and talk to, 100 lawyers or 200 lawyers in the room. This is too valuable not to get out as best I can from coast to coast. So I thought, all right, you're going to have to write the book. So I made up my mind, I'm going to write another book. And I thought this time I got it down, and I'm not going to be humiliated by Tina this go around. So, and she's sweet and smart. And I tell her these are our books, not my books. You know, everything she said was right. It was dead on. It's just hard to hear when you think you're done with it. You get past the feeling of insult, and then you go, God, there's a lot of work here. But I decided I'm going to do it, but this will be much easier. Then it's like, when the hell am I going to find time to write the book? I'm trying a case damn near every week. So COVID hit. So I hated COVID, but the silver lining for me was like, it gave me time to write the book. And I was on the phone with our lawyers every day. That's how I filled my time when the courts shut down. I had started individual calls, hundreds of them, one every hour on the hour, boom, 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 just problem solving. And I started seeing waves and waves of the same stuff and giving the same answers. And that led a lot to this wannabe problems aren't real problems section. So I had all these new epiphanies and time on my hands to write. So I started writing. And I got through the thing and I sent it to Tina, and I thought, this time they're all about the same length. I got the lead in, I got the wrap up. It's so much better. I now know how to communicate in writing and not be boring or corny. And I thought, this one she's going to send back and say, now you got it, bud. This will be. Hell no, the rewrite was not as bad as the first time, but it still was. It was like, you got to be kidding me. So I probably spent 6 months in COVID writing it. Not probably less, because I had more time on it. It's probably 3 months, and the rewrite was probably 3 months. But I finally got the last draft back, and I thought, I don't want to read this damn thing again. But I read all the way through. Sure as hell, I made some changes that I just thought it could flow better. So it's a long process. It's a hard process. And even now that I'm on finished book 2, my wife just said, you got another one in you. And I said, I know. I said, maybe next time Tina will send it back and said, you actually are a writer now.
Do you have an audio?
Together, I tell you this, if that book does not do as well or better than Don't Eat the Bruises, I'm going to be surprised, because having now had a break from it and really had to read through that last time that I've just done over the last week. I don't want to sound self-congratulatory, but I was proud. I said, that thing is so full of stuff that can change the outcome of cases. I am tickled pink to now have the opportunity to get that out to anyone wanting to get it.
Do you have an audio version of your books?
I'm doing it. I actually read the first 100 pages, but I couldn't finish because I hadn't done the redrafts yet. That's as far as we'd gotten. That was tight. The rest I had to get to it. So we caught up to it. But you stand in a room with a mic like you got there and plexiglass around you and headphones on and a music stand in front of you and a draft, and you just read. And honestly, I don't know what the next sentence is going to say. And so you screw up a sentence, you go, and if they edit it all out, but if you could hear it about every paragraph somewhere, I go, shit, and you just reread the sentence, and once you get it wrong, I guarantee you're going to read it wrong 3 times, or you put the emphasis on the wrong word, and it's given the wrong message, and you got to read it again. So that is a very painful process. By then you're just worn ass out reading, but it's also kind of fun. We got through it, and we got the first 100 or 150 pages done. I got to go back in I probably got 6 hours standing with that mic, and we'll have it done. But they've offered to have a professional reader do it. I'm like, no, they're not going to know what to emphasize. How in the world would they know? And some of it is so personal to me in my communication style. I'm like, if we're going to put it on audio, and my goal is to really help, then suffer through standing there and reading it, because I think it's more helpful if it's coming out of my mouth than someone else that's some actor and he isn't even a lawyer. So yes, that's coming. I got a trial next week and a big trial after that out in California. It's going to take 2 or 3 weeks. So it's liable to be next month where I finish up, but it's coming for the audio, but not the other. If anybody wants this book, and listen, I don't know when this plays, but if you want it, if it's still in the pre-order stage, go ahead and pre-order, because every book they're printing has been pre-sold. So they've asked me to get the word out. If somebody really wants it and doesn't want to wait, go ahead and pre-order it, because we'll just get some more in the first. Of course, they're going to up some so they have extra, but I'm pleased the pre-orders have been through the ceiling. So
people can get it through trial guides, right?
Trial guides is the way to go. When you go to like one of the Googles or something like that, those people got to make a living, and the price is high. So I go through trial guides. They've got none of them are cheap, because, and look, I'd love for them give them away or be, $10 a book, but trial guides does a service. Aaron DeShaw, who owns it, is a lawyer. He's not doing it to make a fortune or make a bunch of money. He's doing it because he's a true believer like you and I are. And so he knows there was a need for the service. No one had filled that market for plaintiffs' lawyers. And he decided, I'm going to do it. And so he doesn't make, he's just trying to break even. So it's a small operation. So they have to charge to keep it going. And it's such a service. I ask people, don't grumble at their prices. They're not doing that to gouge you. They're doing that so they can keep providing these fantastic books. Like Nick Rowley's got a new one coming out with David Ball and Courtney and David Ball's partner. I just wrote a blurb for it, and it is really good. So, a lot of great stuff out there. But for trial guides, think what we wouldn't have. So.
When you think about your time, and you only have so much time in your day, and it's because time's finite, would you rather be doing stuff like working on books, Deeper Cuts coming out soon, or be in a courtroom? If you had to pick.
I'd rather be in a courtroom than writing a book, just because the book, some people say, God, nothing's harder than a trial. Because I'm there so much, I kind of got an unfair advantage. It's hard. Of course it's hard. And if you always feel like I've had one more hour, if I could just get another hour of sleep, and the clock's tick, 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 tick. But the actual in the courtroom itself part of it's not that hard to me. It's the lack of sleep and all the work goes, because I tend to get in the cases right beforehand. So I'm really cramming to learn them. But so the book to me is harder work than the courtroom. I loved them both, but one is love with less labor. But I would say this, it's hard for me to say, because one of the true joys of my life is trying cases. But I think I'll probably, when you kind of count your blessings and you're on your deathbed, I will probably be counting the sharing and teaching part maybe even higher than the individual verdict part. And not that the individual verdicts don't mean the world to me, but there's something, play it forward, pass it on, that just feels almost spiritually important. So I love the teaching side of it. I got 2 school teacher parents, but it's not, and I'm not, you get on a stage and you got 200 people out there and they all clap and laugh and you can see them writing. And does that give you a little ego boost? Sure. I mean, I'm not going to say, there's no ego in it, but is that a driving force? No, it really isn't. It's a kind of little bonus. The driving force is when you get on the plane and fly home, or now in these webinar days, you click off and you go, I know I just left a bunch of people with stuff that are going to help their clients, help them get justice, help them head off the sneaks on the other side of trying to get away with a horrible outcome. And that touches something in my soul, because I was really blessed to have great tutors. I mean, my teachers were so good. I don't mean law school. I mean, my first job. They were fantastic, and they threw me in early, and I tried cases with them early. And, they weren't nice about it. You did something wrong, they called you a dumbass. But I learned, but I also loved them and they loved me. So it was, they just were rough, but they were great. And I think, gosh, not everybody had that opportunity. And it makes such a difference. My career would be so different had I not had those 2 guys point me right and teach me right when I was impressionable and figured it out. And I think not everybody's had that. And I think I can't go be everybody's tutor that's younger, but by God, the next best thing is I can get it out and try and write it in a form that's the next best thing, or do a bunch of webinars that are the next best thing to that. And so I really feel I have an obligation, but obligation sounds like something hard. It's a duty, and it's a labor of love to say, I'm going to do everything I can to give you what I got. And if you're a more experienced lawyer and you had a great tutor and you don't need a damn thing from anybody else, you know what? What if I give you something that lets you, up your game just a little? I still get people give. Nick Riley said something, talking to him the other day, and he's a dear friend. And he said something about, that's my truth. I'd say to the jury, that's your truth. And I said, oh man. And I'd say to the juries when I'm asking about bias questions. So, So we may have a strike against it in spite of your best effort. Yeah. And if someone were to ask you, you just say, that's my truth. Yeah. Well, now it's your truth. You want to tell them to not tell their truth? So I pick up. So I don't care how good you are. I can still maybe give you something. One of the greatest lawyers in the history of trial lawyers is Brian Panish out in California, who's a dear friend of mine. And, Panish will call me before closing argument. I give him something he uses. And God knows I've used some of his stuff. So it's just you can share with the greatest, you can share with the next tier below that are very, very good, and you can share with the brand new ones that are going to be superstars someday. And all of them touch my heart, probably the young ones more than anything, but all of them do, because someone did it for me. And to be maybe the greatest joy to me, not the greatest thrill. The greatest thrill is getting a verdict, and being in the courtroom and taking on a witness and killing them and doing an opening that destroys their opening. So they get up and we're all happy. And now you realize when they're done, their head's hanging down at lunch after their opening because you just ripped their heart out in opening. Or you deliver a closing that you can see the jurors nodding, and the defense gets up and delivers, and you get up and rebuttal and point out just how unfair everything they said was. I mean, those moments, I don't know much else feels like that. Then when that verdict's read, if it all comes together and you got a good verdict, that's a just verdict, a full verdict, a maximum justice matrix verdict. I mean, gosh almighty, it's so fulfilling. So the thrill of that courtroom is irreplaceable, but probably the most profound to me is the sharing and the passing on. So when you asked me to be on, I said, if I got the time, it's another opportunity to do something that I truly feel a calling to do.
What would Keith Mitnik tell 25-year-old Keith Mitnik today?
What would I tell him? I'd tell him, don't be so hard on yourself. What we do is a joy. And any of us that are worth a damn at it, have such high expectations of ourselves. And I would never say set your expectations any lower. That's part of being driven. If you're ever going to be good, you got to be driven, and you got to set your sights way up if you're going to be driven. We don't want to coast. But I think you can set your sights high and expect a lot of yourself and not be so hard on yourself when you're learning. Because, look, we make mistakes when we're 37 years into it. But when we're younger, we make more. And gosh, I was so hard on myself. When I couldn't do it perfect, I couldn't live with me not doing it perfect. And so it sucked some of my joy out of, I still loved it. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. But I could have loved it more if I tell young lawyers, it's not about being pretty. And what I mean is, I'm not talking about attractive. It's not about being polished and perfect. It's about having a package that's a winning package. And you don't need to develop that in the spotlight of a courtroom when you're trying to remember what's the objection and how do I lay a predicate and how do I not look like a fool and how do I remember all this and, how am I going to not let my client down and I don't really know what I'm doing. And you got all that going on, and it's all with everybody watching and the judge over and over and your defense lawyer trying to wreck everything you do. And you don't have to be in that pressure cooker to develop a winning package. You do the winning package before you step in when there are no bad answers. You have the greatest idea in the world and you talk to someone more senior and they say, nah, and here's why. You go, well, okay, it didn't hurt anything. This was behind the scenes. And you keep working and you access people that maybe have more experience and know-how, or you talk to your wife or your friends or your husband who's not a lawyer, and you start getting ideas and you work it. And when the time you walk into court, you can have a great package, even though you're not a great lawyer yet. And you can walk in with your integrity, your honor, your integrity, and the jury knows you believe and you're a straight shooter. And honestly, this is what I wish someone had said to me. If you can develop, because I had great minds and experienced lawyers, 2 of them I could go to any time. I had great packages. If I had known it's not about being pretty, if someone would have sat me down and said that, you want it to be pretty, strive for it. I want to leave the courtroom. I want the judge, the bailiff, the court reporter, the defense lawyer to talk about me for the rest of their damn life. I want to blow them away. And I really kind of want to make the defense lawyer feel less about himself for the rest of his life. But so you want to go, wow, of course you do. Who the hell would do this job and not want to leave big time impressions? The point is, that's going to come. There's just not going to happen like that. It's just impossible. I was born with a lot of talent to do this. And I'll tell you a little side story. When I was in law school, my second year, they had an internship program. And you could go to public defender or state attorney's office and actually try cases, and you weren't even out of law school yet. But you had to have a supervisor with you. And the idea was you maybe got up and did a direct or something, but it was more about being in the fire and watching and doing. Well, the guy that was supposed to be my supervisor took a private job. My very first trial, he sat with me in the back of the room. In the next trial, and I had 7 of them, I was over there alone. And trust me, I won. And so I'm thinking, you're just such a natural. You have a teacher, you're over there not even out of law school. You won them all. You did great. So out of the blue, like 10, 15 years ago, the assistant did that. It was misdemeanor department. They didn't give you felonies. I bumped into her somewhere downtown. I didn't even recognize her. You know, I lost my damn hair. I had hair down to here at the time. She recognized me. We started talking. She says, you know what I came across the other day? There is a audio tape. The guy that was supposed to train me was my very first closing argument. Because in county court, we didn't have court reporters. They just taped the damn thing. So it was a cassette tape. Said he got that after your first one. He meant to send it to you and he never did. And I found it. Would you want it? I said, yes. So I get it. I get home. I cannot wait. I had to go find a damn cassette player. I had found one in the back of a drawer somewhere and stuck it in. I couldn't wait. I was going to say, I know it's going to be, rough, but I'm going to be so impressed. I listened for probably 3 minutes and turned it off. I couldn't take it. It was so bad. I just kept saying reasonable doubt. So the point of all that is, when I was younger, I wanted it to be, I'm with these great lawyers and they're throwing me in. We're just splitting cases. And I wanted to do it like they did it. And if I didn't, I'd get, I would be told about it. And I wasn't doing it like they were. And I was so hard on myself. And if someone would have said to me, it ain't about being pretty. You can prepare the package before you get in courtroom that's a winning package, and you got integrity. You can be a straight shooter. That's who you are. I don't need to learn to have integrity and be a straight shooter. And if I come in and they know I care, they know I believe, I'm shooting straight with them and I got a winning package. If I'd have known the chances of me winning for my client as opposed to letting them down is just about as good as it would be 37 years later. I wouldn't have been so hard on myself that it wasn't so pretty when I started. I'd have realized that's for you. And it's an admirable goal, but it's not a necessary part of getting a just result. You got everything you need right now. And I did. And I was getting results and was just miserable with myself that I was floundering along the way in the courtroom sometimes. And that's the thing I would say to myself. I would give people that same talk I give now that are younger lawyers about it's not about being pretty. to get their confidence up, but more than confidence, to let them enjoy this beautiful thing we do without all of the being disappointed in yourself. Don't be so damn hard on yourself. Love what we do.
Your books and all the seminars you've done are filled with analogies. I call it the power of Keith Mitnik's analogies. Where does that come from? Where do you just literally think of these, the pilot light, the pie eating contest? I mean, I could go on and on. Do they just come to you, or is that stuff you develop? How do you come up with so many great analogies?
That's a great question. Here, it actually, everybody uses analogy. Every non-lawyer uses analogy. So I did it before. It became a specific trial strategy when I read a book. And it was a book. I love reading books about how the mind works that aren't lawyer books, because that's where you can really tap into something completely fresh that's exciting. So I was walking in Barnes and Noble, and there was this book called something like Stuff of the Mind or something like that. And I'm reading it, and it's how the mind processes information. And I thought, God, this is going to be great. But it probably didn't even belong in Barnes and Noble. It was like for a PhD level for somebody. The author is a famous guy. And the book he's like a linguist, neuropsychologist. There's a bunch of stuff. Some of them I didn't even know what the hell it meant. The guy's got all these titles, but he's in laboratory studying how minds are made, decisions are made, and how the mind works. And so I thought, this is great. It was a big old thick book. And I read that thing, and it was so over my head. And I kept sticking with it because I thought there'll be something good in here. But I was disappointed, not because it wasn't a really well-written book, because it was just too scientific for my level of understanding. I'd had to keep looking words up. I didn't know what they meant now. But there was one chapter that made every bit of reading that big tome worth it. And it was on analogies. And the essence of what it said was, human beings' minds are incapable of understanding something, a concept for which we have no experience. We just can't do it. So how do we expand our knowledge? How do we communicate about things someone doesn't have any experience with? We do it through analogy. You say, all right, you don't know about this. You don't know, you've never experienced a witness going south during cross-examination and getting kicked in the teeth. I want to make you as a non-lawyer understand it. I can use an analogy. There's a comedian, I can't think of his name, who said, you know that feeling when you're leaning back in your chair and all of a sudden you go too far and you're about to go over and you catch yourself and your stomach comes up into your throat? He says, you know that feeling? He says, that's how I feel all the time. And I thought that is such a great joke. It's also a great analogy. I'd say, you know that feeling leaning back in the chair when it's about to go over and tip over and you barely catch yourself and you get that rush of panic and it comes up in your throat and you're looking around. That's what it feels like when you get kicked in the teeth by a witness live. And now they go, I've never tried a case in the world, but I know what it feels like when things go south. That's how you do it. It's the analogy. And it goes back, I won't go into all of it, but it goes back to caveman days. This was not some lawyer with a theory. This is scientific stuff from a true high-level Harvard scientist. And that's the way all the way back to caveman, we get across things that people have no experiences or concepts they have no appreciation of, and we expand our knowledge. You don't know this, but you know something like it, and you go, oh, if it's like that, then I get it. Now you do get it. Now you can build off that, and that's where it comes from. So I had read that book, and I dog-eared that section. I went back and reread it, and I got excited. When I read it, I thought, this may be worth everything I'm reading. but I needed to get to the end. And then I got there and then I came back and studied it. And I had a trial starting like 2 weeks after I finished it. And I thought something went wrong in the case. And I needed to explain it to a jury. And I had decided I want to start using analogies as a specific pretrial strategy and say, what do I need an analogy for this? Yes. What is it? And then I would go get it. And it all started with a trial. And it was a guy went up a ladder, and the ladder was one of these extension ladders. And it went over, and the guy fell down and shattered his hip. Had pins all in his hip. It was a bad injury. He was up 16 feet in the air working on a window. The defense's argument was there was nothing wrong with that ladder. He must have been reaching out over here and toppled over. And that was their case. The ladder looked like shit. It ran on these little tracks like this, and it was supposed to be hooked in as the extension would go up, but it was actually out like this. And it was just teetering. And you look at it, and it looks like if you breathed on it, it would go. But it wasn't. Our expert goes out to show me on the roof of our building, on the garage, on the top floor of the garage, and he goes, let me show you, and the damn thing's not toppling over. And he finally says, he'd already done it all. He was showing it's deceptive because it looks like it wouldn't hold, but to this day, don't know what the hell was holding that ladder together when it got extended, because it wasn't hooked like it should, but it was. And he says the way it happens is when you climb it, you squeeze. That's what normal people do. That's what releases it. Sure enough, he showed me. So we get in federal court, first trial in the brand new federal courthouse. Judge is having a fit because he's got the ladder up and he doesn't want him tearing up the new wallpaper, but we finally get it up. He goes to show the jury how this is how it topples. And my whole case had been, this is a rickety ladder. They were making it down in Mexico with no quality control and shipping it up here. And that was all good stuff. But still, I got to show that the thing that looked defective was actually causing the fall. Because remember, they say he just toppled over. Expert goes up, doesn't do it. Comes back down, goes to climb again. Now he's squeezing, and you can tell he's squeezing his ass off. Doesn't do it. Comes down again. I'm sitting there. If I hadn't lived in courtrooms, I might have thrown up. And I'm sitting there like poker face, doodling because I'm ready to break out in sweat. And I don't want him to see it. And he says, well, let me show you. Now he goes up. It's so obvious he just squeezed the hell out. It's like his veins are popping out. But he does get it to do it on the third try. And I go home and I thought, what? And closing's the next day. And I thought, what am I going to do? I mean, you didn't miss the show. It was a joke. And I thought, wait a minute, you just read that stuff and you got this big plan. You're going to start using analogies. Here's your chance. How can I get across to the jury? So I started, and I will give you one hint on getting analogies. Define very crisply what it is you want. I mean, really crisply. Before you start seeking through day-to-day life, you go to house, you go to your car, you go to work, you go to playtime, you just start running through normal occurrences in life, but don't go to the normal occurrences first. You're going to waste a lot of damn time. Define it extraordinarily tight, then go searching through life in your mind, and they'll come to you. And I know, because I started just searching, casting in the net. I hadn't figured out I needed to define it first. And the first thing came to me, I thought, aha, I got it, was you take your car in the shop, it's making a dinging noise, a clinking noise, and you take it in, it won't make the clicking noise. So just because that doesn't mean there's not a problem, it's just frustrating. Problems don't always present when you want them to. That was my point. I thought I got it. And I told my wife, who's my muse, she was a court reporter 25 years. She's been in more courtrooms than I have. She's very, very insightful, but she sees things different than I do. So I never go to trial that I don't bounce things off her. And I almost always don't use something I was gonna after talking and end up using something she thought up. I didn't, and then I polish it up. So I did my normal thing with my wife. I ran and said, I got it. Here's the analysis. She goes, I don't like it. I said, why? She says, and look, when we're getting trial, she hates injustice as much as I do. So she doesn't just say, oh, that's so smart. She's going to tell me what she thinks, which I want. And she said, I don't like it. And I said, why? I'm so proud of it. She said, because the underlying principle is you know something's wrong with your car. Is that the analogy you want to use? That's assuming your guy knows the ladder's not safe. I said, well, I think you're being picky. And she says, I don't know. I went back out on my back porch and sat and thought, God damn it, she's right. So I'm back to the drawing board. So I finally said, settle down and think about what it is you're after. That's where I learned you better be precise. And here's what finally got me there. I said, what I really want, if I want to be very specific, is I want mechanical things that run on a track that have a defect that will work just fine most of the time, and then suddenly without warning won't. Now that's pretty specific. Then I started thinking about things in life that might fit that. So here comes closing argument. And I like to cast the net. If you can come up with more than one analogy, do, because some people grab on this one and some on this one. Because here's the beauty of an analogy. If a juror goes, I know that one, you're not allowed to golden rule, but you just legally golden rule, because now they're understanding it from their own life experience. So these were the three I did. I don't know why it is, folks, that mechanical things that run on a track that have a defect will run fine for a while and then they won't. I don't know why it is, but I know it's so. When I was a kid growing up in Eustis, Florida, up the road, I had a 10-speed bike, and the chain had just a little defect where it had twisted, one link. And I'd ride that thing all over for like a month. And for whatever reason, I'd be on it pedaling hard, and that chain had hit just wrong, and it had gnarled up, and I'm over yanking and pulling and getting it. And once I got it off and again, I'd run again for a month until it happened again. I don't know why it is that mechanical things that run on a track that have a defect will run fine for a while and then they won't without warning. But I know it's so, because when I was in law school, I had an apartment and it had a sliding glass door, and the sliding glass door had a little bend in the bottom where it slid, and it would open and close fine. And about once a month, usually when I was running late to class, it would hit just wrong and it would freeze about a foot from being closed. And I'd be pulling and yanking and getting, and I'd finally get it back, and then it would do fine for a month. I don't know why it is. The mechanical things that run on a track that have a defect will run fine for a while, and then they won't without warning, but I know it's so, because right now today, I got a car in that parking garage over there, and it's got an antenna that runs up and down, and it's got a little bend in the antenna. It's not enough to replace it, just a little. And it goes up and down fine. And then about once a month, I don't know what it is with once a month, but it just seems to be so, it'll freeze. And I'm afraid my car is going to catch on fire. And I'll start it up a couple times, then it'll go, and then it'll work fine for a month. I don't know why it is. The mechanical things that run on a track that have a defect will run fine for a while, and then they won't without warning. But I know it's so, and I know this. It is not acceptable to have that rickety ladder made with no quality control down in Mexico, to have someone suspended 16 feet off of the ground and have it be a hit or miss proposition. And as I told those stories, I watched a group of jurors go. I watched another one, and then I watched another. Everyone had had at least one of them, some of them more of those very experiences. And they brought back, this ladder company told us, we have never in the history of this ladder company that's been around, 100 plus years, ever lost one of these we took to trial. We've settled them, but when we pick them for trial, we've never lost it. You should settle this case. I said, fine, offer some money. They will never say they've never lost a case again. We won, and we won big. I am absolutely convinced, but for the analogy idea that came out of that book, I lose that case. So I came out of that, and now I am a full-on sold on analogy. So to this day, if I got a trial, you can bet there's going to be an analogy. And if I'm not in trial and I'm sitting around trying to figure it, and I've sat in a courtroom and watched them look, he doesn't look hurt. Look at him on his surveillance. Look at him on his Facebook. Look how much fun he's having. Look at him on the ride. Look at him mowing the yard. Look at him unloading boxes. And I thought, that's not fair, because this isn't the kind of injury that interferes so much with the doing as the experience of doing today. But today's as good as it's going to get. When the natural aging process overlays on top of the damaged links on the spine, it's only going to get worse with time. And this, we don't come back in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. We get it right now, we don't get it right at all. So yeah, he looks okay now. He's living on injections, but he looks fine because you can't judge a book by its cover. But you know why it is? Because this is called what most people call pilot light pain. Some of you are younger may not know what a pilot light is. Pilot light is, for those that are older, our gas stoves had a little pilot light. It was always flickering and never went out. When you cook it, you turn it up. Then when you're done, you didn't turn it off. You turn it off, but the pilot light stayed there flickering. Same thing with the old hot water heaters. Well, he's got pilot light pain. It isn't cane pain. He's not hobbling around, not today. It's pilot light pain. But now he lives his life somewhere between pilot light pain and flare-ups. And he's constantly making many choices. Do I do or don't do? Knowing I'm going to pay the price with flare-ups. And so his freedom to live life without having to make those choices has been taken. He didn't have to make them before. Now he does. If he chooses to not do, because he just doesn't want to put up with the flare-up, he's given something up. It's taken something from him because he would have done it without thought before. If he does it and ends up laying on the heating pad for an hour afterwards, it's taking from his health. Those many choices have taken his freedom to live life without having to make all these little choices, do or don't do, knowing there's going to be a consequence. And it's just going to get worse. So suddenly, pilot light pain, people can see it. And now they go, I get it. Flare up. So all of that comes from, here's another one, rising tide. I picked this up walking. I live on the ocean over here called Ponce Inlet on the East Coast, south of Daytona, real quiet little area. And I get up early and I walk, and a lot of my ideas come out, doing a 2-3 mile walk in the morning. And I'm walking and I really think working a problem in my head. And I realized, God damn it, the tide on the wave almost got my foot. It had been down. I was walking straight. I had to hop over. A couple minutes later, I had to hop up again. I'm like, God damn it. And I thought, rising tide. Thought, what a great way to get the point across. How when people think you're asking for a lot of money and the burden of proof ought to be higher, not just what's more likely right than wrong, it ought to be closer to beyond a reasonable doubt. They'll all say, no, fine, I'll just follow along. How do you get the point that that's easier said than done? Rising tide. You say, if you believe, if we're asking for millions of dollars, that this more likely right than wrong is just not enough. In your heart of hearts, you think it ought to be closer to beyond a reasonable doubt, especially if you're talking about that much money. You can say with the best intentions, if that's the law, I'll follow. But it's easier said than done because it's like a rising tide. It's very hard to hold back. And when you get back in that jury room, there is no electrode attached to your head that's going to send off, dee, 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 dee. You're raising the burden of proof. It's an honor system, but you're also a human being. And if your heart of heart says, I really think it ought to be here, it's very hard to not let that tide rise. Do you think, given your thoughts and your feelings on this, that even though you try hard, you couldn't assure the court that you're not going to unintentionally raise the burden some because a rising tide is hard to stop? Yeah. And then they come back and try to rehabilitate. So, but you'll follow the law. I'll try, but it's like the rising tide thing he was talking about. So boom, rising tide changes it all. All of a sudden people go, I got it. Here's one more analogy. This is a hot off the presses. And I love this new one. When you're doing voir dire, and I'm not going to go through my whole thing on my bias busting system where I use pies or barbecue sauce or whatever it is to get the point across, but I've added a little piece that is really juiced this thing up, and it's in the new book. But I'll give you a preview out of it. I tried a case up in Mississippi, and I had a bunch of valid challenges to cause. And I had a judge, I didn't give a damn what I argued, what case I gave him. Say anything else? He let me talk forever. He's very patient. Anything else? No, sir. Denied. I said, but Your Honor, anything else? No, denied. Do you have any more? Yes. Argue this one. Denied. After about 10 denials, I knew what the next one was going to be. Didn't get a damn one grand. And they were all denied on, he said he'd listen to the evidence and follow along. Be fair. which of course doesn't change the fact they said they hate everything about your case and they can't put it aside, and that they couldn't assure the court they could be completely fair and impartial, and they couldn't base the decision solely on the evidence presented, be the evidence plus. And I've done all that, so I thought, okay, and none of it would have mattered. I don't think. I think it's just someone that didn't believe in cause challenges, never seen my system, so I was doomed. But it made me go away saying, you know what, you need to work harder on dealing with you'll base your decision on the evidence. So I spent some time thinking about it. And I had said many times in the past, now you're not going to put your fingers in the air and ignore the evidence, but your feelings, I got a better way to get it across with a simple analogy. So at the beginning, I tell the jury, so I'm going to be asking you a question about life experiences, opinions, beliefs that could potentially impact you if you sat on the jury. We all have subjects, if we were to sit in judgment of it, that we would come to it with some beliefs already in place, that one side would be at a disadvantage, the other side an advantage if we were making the decision because of what we brought, whether it's politics or whatever, sports teams, all kinds of things. And jurors start nodding. I say, and the idea here is just to find folks that don't have those points of friction that are going to be an issue with matters of what this kind of case or issues in the case. Then this is the new, now I would normally go into, for example, if I was asked to randomly pick that audience to judge the pie contest, that's where I'd go. Right before that, this is the new little piece. I say, most people think trials are one big fact dispute, kind of a giant he said, she said, and no one can agree on the facts. Well, certainly there are going to be some facts disputed, but to most people's surprise, trials are more about disputes over conclusions from facts than they are disputes over the underlying facts themselves. A lot of the facts are agreed to, but the conclusions are what are in dispute mostly. And your feelings and your beliefs and your experiences can have a profound impact in the space between a fact and a conclusion. Right here is where those things come into play with human beings. It's like, here comes the analogy. It's like if we were in a criminal case, which we're not, this is a civil case, but let's just hypothetically, if there was a criminal case and the prosecutor was trying to prove this person did a horrible crime, and his star witness that he needed to get a conviction was a police officer. And one juror didn't trust police officers, and another juror tended to believe everything they said. Those two jurors could reach opposite conclusions, hearing the exact witness give the exact testimony, sitting in the exact courtroom on the same jury. And I tell you, when you say this, here's what you're going to see in the jury. And they're fascinated because they never thought about it. They're getting it big time, that little analogy. And so you understand how it's not as simple. There's a saying, the facts are the facts. And you know what I say? Not so fast. Because the facts are the beginning of the process, not the end. It is the conclusion. And you have to pass from fact to conclusion through the territory of life experiences and opinions and beliefs, which can send it, just like that criminal case analogy, in two very opposite directions with two very honest people doing their level best to do the right thing. Does everybody understand? The lights are going boom. You're just blowing the juror's mind. And then you go, now let me give you one more analogy, because I think it helps if you understand where I'm going before I go there in this process, because this is an unusual process. Most of you haven't been through. If we were ever to have a competition who had the best pies and it was down to 2 pies, and then I run through all of that. When I get to the end of the pie story, I finish with, I were to be asked, could I base my decision solely on the evidence presented? My answer would be, I'm certainly going to pay attention to the evidence. I'm going to bite in them pies. But can I assure my decision to be based solely on the evidence and the rules I've been given? I couldn't, because it's going to be the evidence plus. I don't like cherry pie. So look, if it's clear cut and I got a dried up sorry pie over here that's apple and a succulent, wonderful pie that's cherry, I'm not going to throw it over the filling. But the closer it gets, the more that comes into play. And I could not honestly tell the contestants that I could base my decision solely on the evidence, because I'd have to say it's going to be the evidence plus, honestly, my bias against cherry pies liable to come into play. Does anyone think if I were to acknowledge that I somehow was weak-minded or unfair? They're going to go, no. Do you think that was the honorable thing for me to do? The honest thing? Yes. Okay, now this case, because I've been better off down the hall, maybe judging the ice cream. I like all the ice cream. Is everybody okay with that concept? Okay, this case got nothing to do with as lighthearted as pies or ice cream. This is a serious matter. Boom, boom, boom. Now, when you get into it, I start saying, certainly you're not going to put your fingers in the air and ignore the evidence. But given the fact that you really don't like pain and suffering damage, you don't trust them, when we go to proving them, is there a chance that we may very well end up having a decision for you that's not based solely on the evidence, that it's the evidence plus those feelings, because you got a bit of a bias? Yes. So you couldn't assure the court you could base it solely on the evidence? No. Then I get to the end. I list everybody I got cause for. I don't go through and say on what ground. I just list them. Tell them, thank you. This is an honor system, and it relies on the integrity of people like you being just straight up, and we appreciate it. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth. It wasn't with you folks. But before I sit down, because I'm not going to be able to get back up, I want to make sure, because I probably am not going to get to talk to you again. Was there any confusion to those of you that said yes? In Florida, I'd say, yes, we have a strike against. In another state, I may say, couldn't assure the court you could be completely fair and impartial. You do the best you can, but these may come into play. Was there any confusion to you folks? No, because that's one of their games to unravel them. It sounded like there was some confusion. Does anybody want to change their answer? Now would be the time before I sit down so I can follow up. No? Okay. Does everyone understand? Because I normally, whatever phrase I'm using under the case law of the jurisdiction to get cause, at some point very early when I get a cause challenge, I define it. Like in Florida, strike against is enough. But I will define it just for this reason, is I want to make sure is everybody okay with this. If I use strike against, that you understand that shorthand for a much longer answer, meaning I cannot assure the court my decision is going to be based solely on the evidence because those feelings, it's the evidence plus those coming into play. Do you understand when I say strike against, I'm including that? That's just short. Yes. So I get to the end and I say, now remember I said that was shorthand. To each of you that said strike against it, all of you understand you were telling the court, I cannot assure you my decision is based solely on the evidence presented in the law given, because it can be the evidence plus those feelings having an impact. Yes. Anybody want to change their answer? No. Thank you very much. This is a process of mutual respect. I say mutual respect because you have already shown respect to this process of American civil justice by just telling it like it is. No sugarcoating it, just honesty. And I want to thank you. But I said mutual respect. How do we show you respect back? We show you respect back by no one is going to try to talk you out of your honest answers or twist your arm. Now I'm really putting heat on the defense lawyer. So thank you. Now, before I sit down, since I won't get back up, can I rest assured on those subjects, that was your final answer? Yes. Now sit down. Now, you know what happens? They start saying, are you going to base it on the evidence? They go, yeah, of course. But like he said, what was that evidence plus? So that's a new one that's in the book. And so that's an analogy. That's a long story. I got into some, I know this was more background, not teaching, but I can't help myself to pass these nuggets out. But it all started with it started with the analogy of the pie contest. Why? Then people instantly understand a concept they didn't otherwise understand. People don't understand bias impacts you. They think if you got a good case, you're fine. Even though I hate PI, I hate personal injury. And by the way, I hate you. You kind of look like someone that I hated in high school. You bald-headed bastard. You know, but I'll be fine. I'm fine if you got a good case. They mean it because they don't understand it. But when you use, if we're having a competition, you said the best pies and it was down to 2 pies, 1 apple and 1 cherry. And I was randomly picked out of the audience. It just so happens I'm not crazy about cherry pie. How many of you think the only right thing for me to do would be to reveal that to the contestants and tell them I'm not crazy about cherry pie? How many of you agree not only was the right thing to tell them that, but also be honest with myself and not sugarcoat the potential impact it might have on me in spite of my best effort to push it aside? Because I'm just wired that way. Does everyone agree? So not only would the right thing be to reveal it, but also be honest with myself and not sugarcoat the potential impact it might have on me, no matter how hard I try. Yes. Guess what? You just gave them a crash course on everything I learned in that book. And guess what they now have? They all understand pie contest, rib contest, nacho contest, Cabernet versus Merlot contest. Everybody gets it. Hot sauce, mild sauce. Now you've taken a concept for which they have no appreciation or understanding how bias works in a courtroom, how a subtle bias can have an unintentional, profound impact. And you just taught them with an analogy. And all I did was juice the analogy up for this bullshit effort to take valid cause challenge away as you'll follow the law. Listen to the evidence. Analogy, police officer, trust, don't trust. And they go, I got it. Now they got it. Look, you're going to have people want to sit on your jury and screw you. You got to figure out who they are and use a peremptory because they're probably never going to give it to you. But the rest of the biased jurors are honest, good human beings. So I'd be happy to go have coffee with. I just don't want to decide my case. They have a right to feel that way. They just ought not be deciding this case. And if I can teach an honest person why they really shouldn't be, then it's not pulling teeth to get the answers to make the record to get a cause challenge. Because where I try cases, I rarely have enough peremptory challenges to get a fair trial. I better be a master of cause challenges. That's why I call it a bias busting system. So for goodness sake, anyone hears this does not have Don't Eat the Bruises. I lay that system out for the first 100 pages or so of the book. And it's life-changing for getting truly fair trials. And the new book's got all this stuff that I just think's like turbocharging. It's not a new system. It's just a plug and play, make it even better.
Keith, before I let you go, I do this thing on my podcast called Fast Five. It's just five.
Time out before you do, real quick. I don't want to forget this. In the spirit of giving and sharing, I did during COVID, I started doing a thing called At Home But Not Alone But Brushstrokes. I've done for several years audio podcasts called Brushstrokes. And I love them because they're little 10, 15 minute things. And it's every month. It allows me to get new ideas out when they're in the new book out. And if you want to listen to those, you can go to keithmitnik.com, keithmitnik.com. And there's a section in there that'll take you to the podcast. And they're all on there. There were 3 seasons, and then COVID hit. And I go up to New York and do them in a studio. And I couldn't get up to New York to do them. I had all these new ideas. So I thought, how am I going to get these things out? This is a perfect time. People aren't in trials. It's a great time. And I've got time. I decided to type them up. And I made a commitment. I'm not sending 10-page memos. Most of them are 1 page. So they're easy, quick nuggets. The longest was 3. Most of them are page 1.5 page. And I just took the name Brushstrokes and turned it into At Home But Not Alone Brushstrokes. And they're the same thing as my audio podcast, except they're in writing. And I started sending them out to anyone on my listserv. I've now done 40 of them. And I'm not done. I've got one, and I've got a trial Monday. If I can find time this week, I'm going to do it. Otherwise, when I get out, I'm going to do it. Got a hot new one I want to send. If you want them and you aren't on my listserv, right? It's free. I don't get anything out of it other than it's a point of contact to send these things out. That's all I use my listserv for. The listserv is, if you will write me at the other one was the website that's got the keithmitnik.com has the actual audio podcast. If you want to get on the listserv to get the written At Home But Not Alone Brushstrokes, email me at kmitnik@forthepeople.com. And it's not MITNICK. People think it's like Nick, the first name. No C, MITNIK. Kmitnik and then FOR, forthepeople.com. And if you don't mind, include my assistant, Mary Arnold, who is just MArnold@forthepeople.com. And just say, hey, I'd like to be on your list, sir. Thanks. She will add you and send you the past 40, and you'll be on for all the future ones. And by the way, they figured, I see you got that thing, fancy mic there. Someone figured out I don't have to go to New York and do them. I now have a fancy mic over here in my corner that I actually have done. The 4th season of the audio ones are now up and running. You can get those too on the keithmitnik.com. But to get the written ones, which people love those audio ones, but I've gotten even more good feedback on the written ones. That's the kmitnik@forthepeople.com. Ask me to add you to listserv. I will, and you'll get them all. Having said all of that, let's go back. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Those are great. We get them every time you send them out, and we actually talk about them in our staff meetings. They're fantastic, and we've built like our own little database of brushstrokes from 1 to 40. So we look forward to more.
Thank you.
All right, Fast 5 with Keith Mitnik, and then we'll wrap it up. These are just 5 fun questions that I put together. So first question: what's your late night craving?
Oh my God. I've lost 15, 20 pounds because I started plumping up even more during COVID. But my real weakness is I love ice cream, especially I just go get me some vanilla ice cream. I tell my wife, I have taken vanilla ice cream and literally put the hot water on it, melted it and thrown it in the garbage, because if I put it in the garbage intact, I'm liable to go back in there and root around and get at it. So ice cream is my weakness.
Would you rather go get a root canal or go to the DMV?
We got rid of the damn DMV in Florida. We don't have to go through that anymore. But I would go to the DMV in the old days because I don't like a root canal at all.
If you were on a deserted island and you can only take 2 of these guys with you, you can only pick 2. Which 2 would you pick? Brian Panish, Nick Rowley, Rick Friedman, or Matt Morgan?
God almighty. You really pinned me down.
They're going to listen to this.
Well, I can tell you Matt would be on there because he's not only was my mentor, he's now a full-grown badass. He's a dear friend of mine. He's like a cousin of mine, but he's also one of my best friends. So Matt would have to go. The rest of them, I'm gonna cheat. I would find a way to ferry him in and out to it, the other one at a damn time. I don't know how I could. I love Nick Rowley to death. He's one of my favorite human beings on the planet. And I respect the piss out of him. Brian Panish and I could sit and tell stories all day, and I am in awe of his skill set, and I love him. Rick Friedman is one of the greatest minds to ever do this, and I have love in my heart for him. So I would be heartbroken if I couldn't shuttle him in and out.
If you, or let me ask that again. Have you read any of the Harry Potter books?
I've seen the movies and loved them, and my son has read them and loved them, and I never have, but I know about them.
Final question. If you could have been anything other than a trial attorney, what would you have been?
Probably a teacher, some kind of teacher. What I wanted to be as a professional football player. I played football in high school, but that wasn't going to happen. Teacher is much more realistic.
Keith Mitnik, the new book is Deeper Cuts. Pre-order it now on Trial Guides. Thank you so much for spending time on the Legal Beagle podcast. You are an absolute delight. I just appreciate everything you've done for our profession and all you've given back. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you for having me. You take care.